In this video, we're going to be reviewing multiplying and dividing integers. This is our third review topic so far this year. To start, I have a warm-up for you, so I'd like you to pause the video and try these on your own. Also, if my voice sounds weird, I did catch a cold, so please excuse that. As you're considering these answers, again, avoid using a calculator if possible, and think about three questions. First thing I want you to answer, and I honestly want you to really think about this, is the answer positive or negative? Just, is it positive or negative? Then what I want you to think about, once you've decided the answer is going to be positive or negative, how are you going to get the answer? Are you going to add the two numbers together? In other words, make it more positive or more negative, so the magnitude of the number gets bigger? Or will you subtract the two numbers together, meaning the numbers get, quote, smaller, less negative or less positive? As an example, number one, I would like you to think about this in a couple of ways. I would think you would look at this and say, okay, the answer is going to be negative. And we know the answer is negative, I hope, because we're starting in a number like negative 12 and we're adding 7. So on a number line, if you needed to see it, we're way out here at negative 12, and I'm only going back this way 7 units. So clearly I'm not going to make it to 0 because that would be 12 units. And so the answer is still going to be negative. So the answer is negative. And then the part B, excuse me, I end up needing to subtract them together, right? Subtract them from each other. So on my calculator, if I'm a calculator person, I don't want you to put in negative 12 plus 7 and figure out the answer, because you already know the answer is negative, and now you just need to know what the difference is between 12 and 7, and the answer is 5. So the answer should be negative 5. Okay. Number two, first thing we want to do is rewrite the problem because minus and negative is confusing. And so we should think of one of these as saying the opposite of negative 8. So 3 minus negative 8 really just becomes 3 plus 8. So we need to answer that question. And then obviously the answer is going to be, it's going to be a positive answer. And now I'm going to add the two together, and it's going to be more positive, right? I'm adding 8 and 3 because I'm getting more positive. And so the answer should just be, let's put it over here. The answer should be 11. Negative 7 minus 5, that should be an answer that is negative, because I'm starting at negative 7 and subtracting 5. So I'm moving away from 0. If you need to see that on a number line, then we're looking at this. Starting out here at negative 7, and I'm subtracting 5, so I'm going to end up more negative. So definitely going to be negative. And then what negative is it going to be? And this is where I would hope, if you're a calculator person, you're just going to do 7 plus 5 on your calculator and get 12, right? So the answer is 12, but it's negative 12 because we're getting more negative. So please don't have the calculator take all the thinking away. Plus, using negatives in your calculator can often lead to errors. So think about the expected answer before you do these problems. Number 4, we're going to rewrite this question. This question really just says negative 10 minus 6, because this double sign thing is a little weird. So you can think of it, you don't have to rewrite this one, but you can think of it as this or rewrite it as negative 10 minus 6. And then again, what's the answer going to be? It's definitely going to be a negative answer. And I'm going to be adding, right? I know the answer is going to be more negative, so it's going to be 10 plus 6, which is 16, but it's going to be a negative 16. All right, the next one, just a little bit of review here. We'll kind of cover this a little bit later. Combining like terms. We can only add things together that are of the same type of things. So 3x's and 5x's and 7x's are all x's, so those can be combined together. So before I do anything, I'm going to rewrite this problem, though, and I don't like that double negative. So minus a negative makes plus 7x. And now I'm going to go left to right. A negative 3 plus a 5, right? Negative 3 plus 5, so I'm going to move from the negatives, and I'm going to make that into a positive. and it's going to pop over into the positives, and it's going to be 5 minus 3, which is 2. So it's positive 2. So this becomes, didn't really give myself enough room, my apologies, 2x, and then I have plus 7x, and 2x's and 7x's makes 9x. All right, so hopefully those are going fine. Let's move on today and briefly review our rules for multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. Specifically, we're going to, I think, stick with integers today. So the product, multiplying two numbers together with the same sign, is going to end up being a positive answer regardless. So if I'm multiplying a negative 2 times a negative 3, then I know the answer is going to be 2 times 3, which is 6. And again, consider the signs separately. A negative times a negative is a positive. So the answer would be positive 6. One way you can think about this, and this may complicate things for some people, but I'm just trying to give people options. You can think of a negative 2 as having a number component and a sign component. And obviously, multiplying a positive number times a positive number, you've been doing that since you've learned how to multiply, and that would also be a positive number. So once again, if you just take the time and separate the sign from the number and pay attention, is the answer positive or negative before you even worry about it? This would be another example. If you're a calculator person, you shouldn't need to type in negative 2 times negative 3 in your calculator. You already know a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. Now you just need to know what the number is. So just do 2 times 3 in your calculator. All right, the product and quotient, so division is the same rule, of numbers with opposite signs is always going to be negative. So a negative 2 times 3, once again, stop and think about the sign. When I multiply and there's one negative, the answer is negative. So I already know the answer is negative. So now 2 times 3 is 6. So the answer is negative 6. And it doesn't matter the order. It doesn't matter the size of the number. So if it's 2 times negative 3, you're going to end up getting, again, a negative and a 6. Okay? All right. Let's have you do a couple of examples. I have included some more challenging examples, i.e. fractions. So hopefully we know how to do that, and we will review it right now. All right, so again, separate it into two questions. Is the answer positive or negative, and what's the number? A negative times a negative is a positive. So this is a positive answer, and 9 times 4 is 36. So the answer is positive 36. The next one, multiplying, is the answer positive or negative? You only have one negative. The signs are opposites here, so the answer is negative. So the only thing left to do is remember how to do 5 times 2/3. And hopefully remember that the rule for multiplying fractions is we just go straight across. So the answer would be 5 times 2 is 10. And then 1, because there's a little 1 that we don't see under here, 1 times 3 is 3. Negative 10/3. All right, let's keep going. A negative times a negative we know is positive, so that part's done. We don't need to put that in our calculator for calculator people. And so then we multiply across, which is 60 over 30, and 60 divided by 30 is, of course, 2. A negative and a negative make a positive. We're done. The answer is positive 2. And 12 divided by negative 4, positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. All right, next one. Same basic idea, except this time we're going to be evaluating expressions. And if you remember, the difference between this and what we just did is very small. But first, what this is implying is we need to plug in the known quantity into the variable and then simplify the answer that we get. Parentheses are going to be pretty critical here, and paying very close attention to order of operations. So what I would expect to see in your work is you've written the question down. There it is. And then we're going to rewrite it using parentheses in almost every situation where we put in variables. So x is negative 20. So this is negative 2 times negative 20 times y, which is negative 3. So we go left to right. And so a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 20 is 40. So this is a positive 40 times a negative 3. And then a negative times a positive is a negative, and 3 times 40 is 120. Everything's at the same order, so we go left to right. Part B, we're going to pay very close attention because if we're going to get these wrong, it's going to be because of the negatives. So I'm going to just focus on making sure I plug them all in from the problem and then do the math correctly. So I have a negative sitting outside of this parenthesis. And then I have an x, which is a negative 20. And then I'm multiplying it by a z, which is a negative 2. Parentheses are getting a little heavy here, and I didn't even put them around the negative 20. So now my order of operations says we go to the inside parentheses. Keep in mind that this inside parentheses on this negative 2 is just there as a multiplication, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But inside these parentheses that I was given, I have to multiply x times z first. So negative 20 times negative 2 is a positive 40. So I have negative, and inside the parentheses is 40, and so that's just going to make it negative 40. Exponents. Be very careful with your exponents. I want you to notice what is being squared here. And this is the most common mistake with exponents, is just putting too many things into the exponent. So we look at this problem. The negative here is not being squared. Only the y is being squared. So another way of writing this problem would have been to write negative and then in parentheses put y and then square it. Those two things mean exactly the same thing. So we have to be very, very, very careful. So plugging in what y is, which is negative 3, I get negative. In parentheses, the y itself is negative. And then I'm squaring. So now, order of operations says we do exponents first. And a negative 3 squared is a negative times a negative, which makes a positive. So this part right here becomes positive 9. But I still have this negative floating out here, so the answer then becomes negative 9. Really easy to mess that up. Z is being cubed, and z is equal to negative 2. So the negative 2 is being cubed. Now this time, notice this negative is inside the parentheses. The negative is part of the cubed. And why is it part of the cubed here? Because again, only z is being cubed, but since z is negative, then that includes it. So this means we have a negative times a negative, which is a positive, times one more negative. So my answer is negative. And then 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So if you're a calculator person, great, use your calculator. But don't do it with the signs. You already knew the answer was negative. A negative and a negative make a positive, so one more negative makes it negative. In fact, if you have an odd number of negatives, it'll always be negative. And an even number of negatives will always be positive. All right, part E. I'm going to plug in what I know, and I can't see it anymore, so let me scroll up. All right, negative 20 divided by negative 4 plus a 2 times a negative 3 divided by negative 2. All right, lots and lots of room for error here. If we just take our time and notice a couple of quick things. We have this plus sign right here. this plus is the last thing I do. So that means the left of the plus sign and the right of the plus sign will both be done independently. And then the last thing I do is add the results together. So I can go ahead and do the negative 20 divided by negative 4. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 20 divided by 4 is 5. Plus, now you'll notice I have a multiply, I have a divide. So now I'm going to go left to right on that side of the plus sign. So 2 times negative 3 makes negative 6. And I've still got it divided by negative 2. And maybe you did that all in your head or in one step. That's fine. But now I need to make sure and I do this division before I do the addition. So that gives me 5 plus a negative divided by negative is a positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 5 plus 3 is 8. All right. Remember that this fraction bar, we had an example like this the other day. This fraction bar is a grouping symbol. So it is telling us do everything on top, do everything on the bottom, and then the last thing I'll do is divide. So 2z, let me scroll back up, negative 2. So 2 times negative 2 plus x, which is a negative 20, divided by 2y, and y is negative 3. All right, so on top, I have to do all that first. I have a multiply, and I have an add. I don't like this double sign right here, so I'm going to fix that as I go. So 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, plus a minus. That's the same thing as subtracting. So I'm going to look at the problem like this. And then I might as well go ahead and do 2 times negative 3 while I'm at it and get negative 6. And then I combine those together and I get negative 24 divided by negative 6. And negative divided by negative is a positive. And 24 divided by 6 is 4. All right, that should be correct. And last problem. A lot going on here. I have a 3. Z, I've lost track, is negative 2. So the negative is being squared here because the whole z is being squared, and in our case, z is negative. Minus 4 times our y value, I believe, is negative 3, divided by our z value, which is negative 2. All right, so looks pretty complicated, but if we just pay attention to our order of operations, we should be fine. Again, I want you to notice this subtraction sign right here. This tells me that I'm separating this problem into 2 halves. So I got to do everything on this side first, minus, I'm going to do everything over here, and then the last thing I'll do is worry about the subtract. All right. So in very basic steps, I'd probably do more in my head if this was just for me. I would do negative 2 squared. A negative times a negative is a positive. So this just becomes 3 times 4 minus, and now I'm going to go left to right. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. So I get negative 12. I'm going to put that in parentheses because it looks weird. Divided by negative 2. And this is where we can get lost, but we just tell ourselves to slow down and pay attention. This division has to come next. And so a negative 12 divided by a negative 2 is a positive 6. So I end up getting this 12 right here minus negative divided by negative is positive. 12 minus 6 is 6. All right. Some of you may not be ready for questions that difficult, and that's okay. But some of you are. So I'm trying to give problems at all levels of class. So if you can, give them a try, even if they do feel like they're hard, because the only way we get better is if we try to challenge ourselves. All right. If you have any questions, we'll just talk about it in class.